Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And we very much welcome this debate, and we share the concerns about the arrangements for this parliamentary session over the next 2 years. And we agree that we do need much clarity about the scheduling of particularly backbench business and opposition business too. Since we've come back, the pace of which the normal arrangements of the House have been put back into place have been clearly woeful and unsatisfactory. We now only have 3 full days left of this parliamentary session before the long summer recess, and we still do not have the select committees of this House up and running, nor do we know the arrangements for the standing committees of the House and the statutory instrument committees of this House. And given that they're going to be particularly burdened with the work round the repeal bill, we need to have some clarity and certainty about these committees. Yes, I'll go wait.
I think I heard earlier that neither the SNP or the Labour Party had yet constituted their own members for the Select Committee, and they were doing that. So, well, I'm sorry if I'm in error, but they have only just constituted their members, and therefore it would not be possible to constitute select members, the select committees, until very recently. We're about to go into recess.
Well, I think I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady, because I'll just say to her with a degree of certainty that we are ready to supply the names of the Scottish National Party's membership of select committees, and I'm pretty certain that the Labour Party are in a position to do this now. Now, Mr. Speaker, you made a very generous offer last week, which you said that you would help to facilitate any political party in this House that seemed to have some sort of difficulty with arranging its membership of select committees. Now, I don't know if the Conservative Party have approached you in order to make sure that promise is fulfilled, because what we've detected and what we've seen is not the Labour Party or the Scottish National Party that are holding up the creation of the Select Committee, it's the Conservative Party. So please, Conservative Party, make use of this very kind offer from the Speaker of the House. I'll give you the honourable gentleman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could it be that so many honourable members on this side of the House want to take part in those select committees, and therefore there may be an election required, but there isn't the same interest on perhaps the other side?
Can I just say to the honourable gentleman a little bit candidly, well, get on with it, for goodness sake. We should have these select committees up and running before the summer recess. And if you can't do it yourselves, take the offer from the Speaker and make sure that this gets arranged. Now, it's not as if this... Yeah, I'll give it to the honourable.
Could I just say again to my right honourable friend, I'll call him, that actually we've had elections in the Labour side for the Select Committee places already. But if the honourable gentleman thinks that they're going to have difficulty in arranging them, we could provide election observers and tellers for the Conservative Party if necessary.
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman, and I'll call him honourable friend too, because I think that's a very good suggestion. How about we take use and advantage of the office of the Speaker? We could send observers along, we could help facilitate the Conservatives in order to try and facilitate this, and then let's get on with it, for goodness sake. We're almost 3 days away from the summer recess. Let's get these things in place. And it's not, I will, because it is the honourable gentleman, I like him.
The SNP were granted the chairs of 2 select committees, and what I can't quite understand is when it comes to all the other parties, all the members were entitled to vote between different candidates from that party, very democratic. But it seemed with the SNP we were just given one candidate. It sounded rather Stalinist to me. Can you explain that?
Well, can I say to the honourable gentleman, that is because they were superb candidates, particularly the one that was nominated for the chair of the Scottish Select Committee. That's why that has been the case. Now, Mr. Speaker, I can't resist the honourable gentleman.
I'm so sorry, the honourable gentleman has left out the amazing abilities of the honourable member for Nihilling and Anyar.
And I'm glad he reminds me of that, because how could I forget my honourable friend, the member for Inyaligin and Yar? I'm grateful for him reminding you of this. This will be the last intervention I'll take for a while, because we need to get some progress.
Just to say that the votes are still being cast in the Labour Party for members of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and if any members from this side haven't yet voted, they've got until 8:30.
He's bidding for a vote. I think I'm grateful for that intervention, Mr. Speaker.
That was the candidate speaking.
And he seems to have energised the benches of the Conservative Party, so it must have been a particularly good intervention that he made. Now, Mr. Speaker, it's not as if this government have been over-exercised and energised with this thus far. And perhaps unfavourably, this Parliament has already been dubbed the zombie Parliament. But I actually think that that comparison would actually give the flesh-eating undead a bad name. This is turbocharged political zombieism. But it's a curious type of zombieism, Mr. Speaker, because if you look at them, not only are they tearing the flesh from the public, they're starting to consume themselves. If you look around Whitehall just now, what passes for discourse, normal discourse amongst Secretary of State and Whitehall departments is briefing and counter-briefing. And this is what happens, Leader of the House. When you do nothing, bad stuff happens. This is a government at war with itself. As briefing and counter-briefing takes place, as they all jostle and compete to be the next captain of the SS Tory Titanic. The Chancellor apparently is trying to stymie Brexit, according to one anonymous minister. Well, if only he'd get on with it. He apparently believes now that Brexiteers are a bunch of smarmy pirates. Whatever a smarmy pirate is. I've got this image in my head of a mixture of Captain Pugwash and Jack Sparrow reenacting the Battle of the Thames with Nigel Farage and Bob Geldof. Now, I don't know what a smarmy pirate is, but shiver me timbers and pieces of eight. I wouldn't mind being one myself. And then we've got the member for Chingford and Woodford Green, who says the plotters should just shut up for goodness sake, which would really deprive this House of so much comedy value. And while the Trade Secretary says that members of the Cabinet should drink less Prosecco, and here was me thinking, cheap Prosecco, surely only the finest champagne would be good enough for my Conservative friends opposite. But according to the Transport Secretary, there's nothing to see here, concluding we're not a bunch of clones. Well, thank goodness for that. Mr. Speaker, it's no wonder that they do not want scrutiny when they're in such a matter of chaos and turmoil. Now, I agree with the Secretary of State, with the Leader of the House, with one thing when it comes to this, about the enthusiasm for so much of this amongst the members of the public. And I have to say, I was at my surgeries on this weekend, and I don't think I've noticed any banners saying that what they wanted was more opposition days for the Labour Party, or that we should get our membership of statutory committees sorted out. But this is still important, and I think our constituents expect us to come down here to ensure that we arrange the optimal conditions for debate and scrutiny, and that we get on with the job and ensuring this government is held to account. And we're right, we're in a very different type of parliament at this time, and maybe that will excuse the government's behaviour for not getting these things back in place. I don't think since the 1970s there has been such a certainty that this parliament won't go the full parliamentary term. It's not since the days of Callaghan and Wilson that we've had that belief. Now, the Fixed Term Parliaments Act is proven to be the biggest waste of parliamentary time possibly in parliamentary history. Supposed to give certainty to the scheduling of parliamentary debates, it was always going to fail when there was a government wanting to have an early election who would be assisted by an opposition who would not be able to resist holding that particular condition. Now, we therefore have a parliament and government on political life support, always requiring emergency treatment and always vulnerable to the infection of events as it tries to define some sense of purpose and meaning. And the condition of this government is all its own fault. Hubristically and unnecessarily calling an early election to try and take advantage of what it observed as a crisis and chaos in the Labour opposition, it is now returned humbled, embarrassed, diminished and chaotic and in turmoil. And it's all their own fault. Mr. Speaker, this is now almost definitely a house of minorities, and therefore legislation and the way that we construct our business in this house must reflect this, and we have to make sure that we get our arrangements properly in place in order to ensure that the new political arithmetic across this house is observed. And that is why it's been profoundly disappointing that this government, instead of rising properly to the challenge of this, has done all it can to frustrate, delay and thwart the creation of all the arrangements that are essential for proper scrutiny in these new conditions. The main means of how this government, of course, is trying to achieve this is to try and have a legislative programme that's as opaque and as meaningless and uncontentious as possible, so that we possibly get bored and don't take any great concern and interest in all this, and that no votes go through Parliament. The only one that is contentious and the big deal of the business of this parliamentary term will, of course, be Brexit. But of course, this government are unburdened with that too, because what they have is a Labour opposition who practically agree with absolutely everything the government want to try and secure and achieve with its hard Brexit. When it comes to the main themes of this government's hard Brexit, whether that's in the leaving of the single market, the leaving of the customs union, or the ending of freedom of movement, he's got a Labour opposition who practically agree with the government on everything when it comes to all of this. And what we have, therefore, is no issue and difficulty whatsoever for this government to get through its Brexit business on top of a legislative programme that is so light that it's almost totally opaque. And what we also have to look at, Mr Speaker, is what's been agreed in the early parts of this Parliament. And one of the most concerning and damaging all the initiative that the government's embarked upon right at the very outset of this Parliament is the appalling deal that this government struck with the Democratic Unionist Party. This was agreed behind closed doors. The House has not had the opportunity to debate this deal, to have it properly scrutinised, to have its consequences considered, not least in how it turns the usual and normal funding allocations of the nations of the United Kingdom right in on its head. This is a deal designed to buy the government its majority, and has unfortunately set the tone for this Parliament, and has defined this government's contemptuous approach to its business. The other thing that has to go, Mr Speaker, very early is the appalling and divisive English votes for English laws procedure. It's opposed and loathed by every other political party in this House outside the governing Tories. It is now clear it no longer secures a parliamentary majority in this House. It's also ridiculous that this government now hopes and relies on a party which is subject to the constraints of evil in order to get its business through. Disruptive to the House, dividing the membership of this House by geography and nationality, its days should surely now be numbered. Let's get shut of it from our standing orders and see if we can secure a solution which we can agree with consensus and agreement and debate. Let's get something that reflects and requires properly scrutiny and attention, and it serves all the nations of the United Kingdom. And we need to get down to business, Mr Speaker. It is simply unacceptable that we won't have these select committees up and running before the recess. Now, we've had a little exchange just about where we are in terms of the logjam of securing and creating these select committees. And I hope that the Leader of the House takes this seriously now, and we get on and we could do this. And we have to have the standing committees in place. Now, what we've had is, because we've not got standing committees, it means that committee stages of bills cannot be properly considered. And it's meant that the government has had to bring the committee stage of these bills to the whole House and had committees of the whole House. 3 bills have now been subject to that particular procedure. There is no statutory instrument committee set up, and it's purely unacceptable that this is going to go on. We've already, after this debate, we're looking at another statutory committee, statutory instrument, because we haven't got these committees in place, and it's clearly unsatisfactory. Yes, of course I do.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. As we all know, we've all been through a process of election where if a prospective candidate doesn't get their name in time, it's tough. The election just goes on without them. They don't postpone the election till the end of the summer until the candidates can sort themselves out. Is that something we should perhaps look at in the make-up of select committees? That if the government party don't bother to put their names on the committees just go ahead and meet without them and go on with the job?
I think that's a very elegant solution to a very solvable problem, and I'm grateful to my honourable friend for suggesting it. Maybe they'll be listening to it, and hopefully we'll get some action in the next few days in order that this is resolved. But my understanding, and the Leader of the House could correct me if I'm wrong in all of this, is that the reason that we haven't got the standing committees up and running is that there's a dispute about the arithmetic. Now, my understanding of the arithmetic when it comes to the standing committees is that the government have 9 places, the Labour opposition have 7 places, and we have 2 places, which I think properly reflects the political arithmetic of the House, suggesting that this House is very clearly a House of minority. And that would mean that the government would have to work just that little bit harder in committee in order to get its business through. What would be clearly unacceptable, and what seems to be happening, and I hope it stops soon, is that the government seem to be subverting the committee stage of legislation and bringing it either to a committee of the whole House here in the chamber or looking to do all its amendments through the report stage. Now, that would be clearly unacceptable. It would fly against nearly everything that we understand about the normal business of getting legislation to Parliament. Yes, of course.
The Honourable Gentleman's making an interesting point because, of course, everybody knows that the most inadequate part of the whole legislative process is report stage, where the government can put down amendments which are never even debated.
The Honourable Lady's absolutely right, and she probably shares my concerns about if that was to pass and how inadequate sometimes report stage happened to be, where we have everything bailed into one. We have report stage and third reading, as well as probably other business and statement that day. These type of intricate, important pieces of legislation requires to be scrutinised properly in the proper committees of this House, and it's incumbent upon this government to make sure that that's put in place. And any attempt to subvert the normal arrangements of bills going to committees is clearly unacceptable, and I hope the House rejects any attempt to do this. And we've heard quite a lot about how things normally get set up, and I'm almost disappointed the member for Chris Bryant, whatever his name, Rhonda, isn't here, because he's a keen student, and I think he actually gave some sort of figures. Now, I think I was elected in 2001, I know that. I think you were elected before me, Mr Speaker, but I remember the election in 2001, and it's in response to the Leader of the House who said that this is unusual given that this is a June election. In 2001 it was a June election. We had all the standing committees and all the select committees in place in 2001, even though it was a June election too. In fact, I think I've got the June election that year took place on 7th of June. I'll just finish this and you can come back on this. The Queen's speech in 2001 was held on the 20th of June, and all the select committees were in place and functioning by the 19th of July. Give way to the Honourable Jim.
And the reason for that is, in those days, it was a stitch-up by the whips. Now we elect the members of the select committees. That's the key difference.
I'm grateful to the Honourable Gentleman because he reminds me, and I'm sure he'll remember this too, of something that happened during this establishment of the select committees in 2001. And he's right, there was a stitch-up by the Blair Whips at that point, and he'll remember when they tried to remove Gwyneth Dunwoody and Donald Anderson from the chair of these select committees, which actually held up the creation of these select committees that year, but we still managed to get them in place. So there is absolutely no reason whatsoever that this can't happen. And the example of the year of 2001 is a very good one, and they were all in place even though that year it was a June election. Can we also say, Mr Speaker, we very much agree with the Honourable Lady when it comes to the arrangements for opposition days and time set aside for backbench business. Now, it looks like backbench business and private members' bill business will probably be about the most interesting features of this parliamentary session, given that we're unlikely, and I hear my friend going here, who's got a particularly good private members' bill, which I'd encourage as much members as possible to come along and listen to. But this is probably going to be the most interesting business, given the laxity that we're going to see from the members. So we have to have proper time and arrangements for all of this.
On that point,
yes, of course, you agree.
I thank my old friend for giving way. Just on the subject of private members' bills, and the Leader of the House mentioned this earlier on, she spoke about giving more time to the House for private members' bill. Is that not almost a pointless exercise unless the government reforms how private member bill go through this House and they actually get their own members to stop stymieing the private members' bills?
My honourable friend is spot on, and I share his frustration, I think, as most people on these benches do, about the way that private members' bills are progressed through this House. It is clearly unsatisfactory. And I remember the private members' bill from my colleague John Nicholson, when it was stopped by government, but we couldn't get we had the necessary numbers here, but it was still stymied by this government and ensured that we wouldn't be able to progress. In the way that certain members of this House, and none of them are in their place at this particular point, do all they can to talk out and filibuster private members' bills. There's a disgrace on this House, because our constituencies expect better than that. When their members of Parliament are lucky enough, like my honourable friend here, is to secure a private members' bill and have that debated in the House, it's right and proper. They expect that they are properly debated, and I hope at some point we're able to reform that. Now, we support what the Honourable Lady said about private members' bills sitting. Of course, that arrangement should be doubled, and I really hope the government do this. There has to be a proper arrangement and a proper understanding about time allocated for opposition days. Now, the Labour Shadow Leader of the House is absolutely right. We are entitled to 3 opposition days per parliamentary session. We now expect 6. Given that it's 2 years, and I hope that the Leader of the House might be able to confirm this. So we have to get all these things out, because the arrangements of this House are clearly unsatisfactory as we go forward, and there's lots of things that we need to do. And I think I did a couple of weeks of usual channels before my friend, the member for Glasgow North East, was put in his place, and I saw how usual channels is working just now, and there seems to be a sort of misunderstanding just about how the different parties' requirements and expectations of this Parliament are met. And I would encourage the Leader of the House as much as possible with the Whip's office to try and get a better grasp of the new reality of this House of minorities, the fact that nobody has a majority, and ensure that our business is equipped and shaped and designed to accommodate the new reality of this House. Mr. Speaker, this zombie Parliament must get up and working. It must be allowed to do its work. It must allow the optimal conditions for scrutiny and empower us as the members of Parliament to do the work that our constituents sent us here to do. For goodness sake, let's get on with it and let's do it.